Bullfrogs are a major predator in aquatic systems. So they eat essentially everything they can stuff into their mouths. Fish, other frogs, they eat small birds, ducklings, goslings, they'll eat rodents. And really, the only thing that seems to limit their ability to eat things is the size of their mouth.
American bullfrogs are an invasive species. They spread diseases that can wipe out native frogs.
Out here, they're missing many of their natural predators and diseases, so they do very well in this landscape. Get our gear together here.
Tom Kay wants to turn the tables on these hungry predators by putting them on the dinner table, but he has to catch them first.
So there's one right there. You see the glint off its eyes. And it looks like there's several right along the bank there.
The frogs are less likely to leap away from you in the dark. We spotlight them with a flashlight, and then another person creeps up from a different direction with a spear and then makes a final plunge to catch the frog.
Nice.
Tom directs the Institute for Applied Ecology in Corvallis. The group restores native habitat in Oregon. That means facing the daunting task of controlling invasive species. Lately, they've been eating away at the problem.
Welcome to the 2015 Invasive Species Cookoff.
The Institute draws people to its cause by showcasing invasive species in an annual feast and cooking competition.
Many invasive species are quite edible and quite delicious even. For example, bullfrog legs are quite delectable. In fact, they taste like chicken.
Ecologist Ben Axt is targeting a different aquatic invader for the cook-off. Crayfish that can take over lakes and ponds from native species.
These are red swamp crayfish. They're an invasive crayfish species in Oregon. You can tell it's red swamp crayfish from the native one because it has these bumps on the claws. These are from Louisiana area. These came in through science classrooms, bringing them into classrooms to learn about nature and then releasing them into our waterways here. These are tasty. I'm gonna steam them up and make them into a kind of a crab dip. Should be pretty good.
Ben is confident about his chances in the cook-off.
They do taste a lot like little lobsters or little crabs, and starting with something as good as crayfish is definitely the best way to go.
He's adding 2 invasive plants to the crayfish dip for what he calls the cream cheese triple threat.
I'm gonna put a dollop of my cream cheese mixture onto the toast, and then chop up my crayfish and top it with that, and then top that with a couple other invasive species, a sweet pea vine and some carrot flower.
Institute board member Bob Hansen has something sweeter in mind.
These are non-native Himalayan wild blackberries that basically take over a habitat and become a monoculture.
For the cook-off, Bob's making blackberry scones.
And I love these scones. They're what I call Pacific Northwest hand-thrown scones, and they take on kind of a very wild and unstructured life of their own. And this gets pretty messy. I haven't expanded to other non-natives yet, but I think that's one of the beauties of this invasive species cook-off. It causes us to think bigger about what the possibilities are.
Meanwhile, botanist Jenny Kramer is going after another thorny plant.
We're out here to collect Canada thistle, and this is an invasive species here in Oregon. It's all over the state, it's all over the country. It's actually pretty much all over the northern hemisphere. You'll find it in places that are disturbed. Usually there's been either some development or logging of some kind. If you go to a place and there's just tons and tons of thistle, we're probably not going to get rid of it there. But if you come to a place and there's just a few thistles like this meadow, you actually can make a really big difference on a local site level.
She'll cook the plants into a quiche.
With some of the lower stems, what I'll do is I'll peel back the skin, and it's really tender and tasty, and they're just like asparagus. You can eat it raw, but I'm going to cook it in butter because I want to win.
At home, Jenny cuts dandelion greens from her backyard, a second invasive plant for the quiche.
So we've got dandelions and thistles here, and basically what we're going to do is, because the thistles have thorns, I'm going to boil them down first just to make sure I don't get any pokies in the judge's mouth, and then we'll saute all this goodness with some other things.
While the thistles cook in one pan, The dandelion greens go in another.
So now we have dandelions, leeks, shiitake mushrooms, basil, oregano, sage, and a whole lot of butter. I am masking the wild flavors a little bit on purpose because they are pretty potent, and we want it to taste good as well as be eradicating our invasive species. Yep, I think we're good to go.
At the cook-off, the tables fill with invasive species creations. Tom fries up his frog legs with Cajun spices and cornmeal.
There's an interesting ew factor around eating some invasive species like nutria or frog legs. It really seems odd to a lot of people, and so they're at the same time repulsed and fascinated.
Very good. Excellent.
Then he sizes up the other dishes.
We've got the dandelion pesto made with dandelion greens. That looks delicious. So this is the invasive species triple threat. It's got red swamp crayfish, sweet pea vine, and carrot flowers. I'm nervous about the crayfish. That's competition for the frog legs. Over here is the starling bacon kebabs with a blackberry reduction sauce. The bacon wrapped starlings is a ringer I hadn't seen coming, so now I'm really worried. Okay, so here's how the judging is going to work. Each dish will be judged in terms of its presentation, its creativity, its taste, and its conservation benefit.
The judges give each dish an overall score. The frog legs are a hit.
They're very flavorful.
But the crayfish dip scores higher.
The results are in. The number one in savory meat was the cream cheese triple threat by Ben Axt. The first place for the savory vegetarian dish was the Canada Thistle Dandelion Quiche prepared by Jenny Kramer.
In the end, Tom says, eating invasive species isn't really the solution.
Tastes like chicken, but it's sweeter.
But it does get people's attention.
We don't really think that we're going to eat our way out of this problem. It's really an awareness method to bring people to the table, literally, to eat them and talk about them and the damage they're doing in a more lighthearted environment. Because, let's face it, some of the impacts they're having are pretty devastating and kind of depressing. And it's important to maintain our enthusiasm in the face of a problem like that. Well, you know, it's not half bad.
You say so yourself.
I say so myself.